At our engagement party, my future mother-in-law slapped me across the face in front of everyone.
Some men are just animals.
She screamed, her voice vicious.
You have to beat them to make them listen.
I froze. The entire ballroom fell silent. A second later, I picked up the steaming tureen of lobster bisque from the table and poured it directly over her head. So, I asked, my voice deadly calm, "Who's the animal now?" 01. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons glittered, crystal chandeliers casting a dazzling light across the room. Every round table, draped in crisp white linen, buzzed with celebration and noise. I, Ethan Hayes, one of the men of the hour, stood with a glass of champagne in my hand. My fiancée, Sarah Miller, was by my side as we accepted congratulations from our friends and family. My Tom Ford suit was impeccably pressed, not a single crease in sight. Sarah's crimson dress made her skin look like porcelain, her eyes sparkling. Everything felt perfect, like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. 3 years we'd been together. 3 years of me climbing from a dirt-poor kid from a small town in Ohio to a director of engineering at a top Seattle tech firm, pulling in 7 figures. I bought a condo downtown with a view of Puget Sound and a new Tesla, all cash just for this day, just to give her the future she deserved. The MC's voice boomed from the stage.
And now, let's give a huge round of applause for the mother of our beautiful bride-to-be, Ms. Brenda Miller, who would like to say a few words.
The room erupted in applause. My future mother-in-law, Brenda, glided onto the stage in an expensive-looking purple dress, her face beaming. She took the microphone, and her speech started normally enough, talking about the challenges of raising a daughter, her hopes for our future. But then her voice began to crack with emotion.
My Sarah.
She said, dabbing at her eyes.
She's been the light of my life since the day she was born. I raised her all by myself, made sure she never wanted for anything. And now she's getting married. As a mother, it's just so hard to let go.
A few sympathetic murmurs rippled through the crowd. I smiled at her, making a mental note to toast her properly later. Then, her tone shifted abruptly. Her eyes, sharp and cold, locked onto mine. Her voice climbed, becoming shrill and piercing.
But some men have no gratitude. A girl like my Sarah, with her background, her education. And he thinks he can get away with a cash gift of $100,000? Are you kidding me? You'd offer more to a charity.
The ballroom fell dead silent. The air turned to ice. Every eye in the room swiveled to me, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and a morbid fascination for the train wreck that was about to happen. The smile on my face froze. 100,000 was far more than we had discussed, and they had agreed to it. It was a generous gift, meant to help us get started. Before I could even think of what to say, Brenda's voice rang out again, laced with an undeniable command.
And that condo of yours. Ethan, your name is the only one on that deed. That has to change. Today, right here, in front of all our friends and family, you will promise to add Sarah's name to it.
I took a deep breath, fighting down the inferno rising in my chest. I stood up, took the microphone from a nearby stand, and tried to keep my voice even. Brenda, the gift was what we all agreed on. As for the condo, I bought that before we were engaged. It's my personal property. We can definitely talk about adding your name after we're married. Sarah, there's no rush. The moment I finished speaking, Brenda's face contorted, turning a blotchy, furious red. She slammed the microphone down on the lectern, stormed over to me in 3 quick strides, and with all her strength, slapped me hard across the face. Crack! The sound echoed through the silent room. My left cheek exploded with a searing, white-hot pain. A ringing filled my ears, and for a moment the world went mute. I was stunned. I saw my parents jump to their feet, their faces a mask of disbelief and rage. I saw our guests staring, forks and knives frozen halfway to their mouths. And then I saw Sarah. She stood right beside me, paralyzed, her lips parted as if to say something, but no sound came out. She didn't move an inch toward me. She didn't say a single word in my defense. In her eyes, I saw panic and indecision, but not a flicker of concern for the man she was supposed to marry, the man who had just been publicly assaulted by her mother. In that instant, something inside me shattered. Brenda's shrill voice, like a knife twisting in a wound, cut through the silence.
Some men are just animals. You have to beat them to make them listen. I'm teaching you a lesson today. You either add her name right now, or this wedding is OFF.
Her triumphant, distorted face loomed in front of me. I looked at her, and the last thread of my restraint snapped. I didn't say a word. The silence in the room was absolute. Slowly, I turned and walked back to our head table. A waiter had just placed a special terrine for the main guests, a rich, creamy lobster bisque. Steam was still rising from the golden orange soup, its rich aroma filling the air. My face was a mask of calm as I picked it up. The porcelain was hot, the heat burning through my palms and into my heart, yet all I felt was a strange, cold clarity. Holding the terrine, I walked step by deliberate step back towards Brenda. Her expression shifted from contempt to confusion, and finally, as she saw the steaming soup in my hands, her triumphant smirk dissolved into pure terror.
What? What are you doing?
She stammered, taking an instinctive step back. I didn't answer. Over the horrified shouts of my parents and Sarah's finally emerging shriek, I tilted the terrine and poured the entire contents, slowly, deliberately, over her perfectly coiffed head.
Aha.
Brenda let out a scream like a slaughtered pig. The thick, golden soup ran down her hair, coating her face. Chunks of lobster and cream clung to her expensive dress. She collapsed to the floor, howling and thrashing, and the ballroom erupted into chaos. I dropped the empty terrine, and it shattered on the marble floor. I shot one last, cold look at the utterly stunned Sarah and forced the words through my teeth. The wedding's off. Without another glance at anyone, I straightened my back and, through the pandemonium of screams and shouts, strode out of that disgusting place. The sting on my face, the ache in my heart, in that moment it all went numb. 02 back in my 1,600 square foot, meticulously decorated condo, I didn't turn on the lights. I threw myself onto the living room sofa, letting the darkness and silence wash over me. The throbbing in my cheek was a dull ache, nothing compared to the desolation in my soul. 3 years. I thought we were building a life together. I remembered her saying she loved floor-to-ceiling windows, so I bought this place with its panoramic view of the Sound. I remembered her mentioning a specific designer bag, and I'd scoured every boutique in Paris on a business trip to find it for her. I thought she saw my love in every sacrifice, every effort, but to them, it was all just leverage. My love, my hard work, it was all just something to be trampled on and extorted. After what felt like an eternity, the doorbell began to ring, a frantic, incessant buzzing that echoed through the condo. I knew who it was. I didn't move, letting the jarring sound fill the empty space. Then came Sarah's voice, muffled through the door, thick with tears.
Ethan, open the door. Please. I know you're in there. Just let me explain.
I remained still. I pulled out my phone and, one by one, blocked her number, her iMessage, her Instagram, her everything. The ringing stopped, replaced by heavy pounding, punctuated by the deep, muffled voice of a man. It had to be her father, Robert Miller. I let out a bitter laugh. The man who sat silently and watched his future son-in-law get assaulted was now finding the strength to beat down my door. Finally, the noise outside stopped. Just as I started to relax, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Like a fool, I answered. Sarah's hysterical sobs filled my ear.
Ethan. How could you be so cruel? My mother is in the hospital. She has second-degree burns. You ruined our engagement, and now you're trying to kill her?
A sharp pain lanced through my chest, not for Brenda, but for the twisted, self-serving narrative she was spinning. I laughed a cold, dead sound. When she hit me, Sarah, where were you? Silence on the other end. A few seconds later, her voice returned, defensive and laced with a pathetic excuse.
I was in shock. And my mom. She was just doing it for me. She's all bark and no bite, you know that. She was just testing you before the wedding, to see if you really loved me.
Testing me? By slapping me? By publicly humiliating me? The audacity of her logic was so absurd it was almost funny. So, what is this, another test?
Ethan.
She snapped.
What's done is done. Arguing about it won't help anything. My dad is here, too. He wants to talk to you.
The phone was passed, and Robert's dull voice came on the line.
Ethan, you were impulsive today. Brenda has a temper, but she's your elder. As a man, you have to learn to take things on the chin. Laying hands on an older woman. That's not a good look.
I listened silently, feeling like I was in the middle of a surreal dark comedy. This father-daughter duo, playing good cop, bad cop, they were quite the team. And I asked flatly. The phone returned to Sarah. Thinking the groundwork had been laid, she finally got to their solution.
Ethan, my mom said that if you come to the hospital right now, get on your knees and formally apologize to her. And then, in front of her, sign a transfer of deed giving me half ownership of the condo. We can pretend today never happened. We can go back to how things were.
Get on my knees? Apologize? Sign away my property? Rage, pure and hot, coursed through me. My chest heaved. So that was the endgame. The slap, the public scene. It was all a carefully orchestrated ambush designed to break me, to bleed me dry. I closed my eyes, took a long, slow breath, and when I opened them again, they were chips of ice. I didn't argue. Instead, I activated another function on my phone. Sarah, listen to this. I pressed play. The clear audio from my phone filled the silence. It was the recording from the party. Brenda's tearful speech, her outrageous demands, and then her classic line, ringing out loud and clear.
Some men are just animals. You have to beat them to make them listen.
Followed by the sharp, unmistakable crack of the slap. I'd had my phone recording in my suit pocket the entire time. A habit from years of contentious meetings in the tech world. Dead silence on the other end. I could picture Sarah's blood-drained face, Robert's stunned expression. Sarah, I'll say this one more time. I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. The wedding is off. You can either leave now, and we go our separate ways, or we can settle this in court. And I won't just sue your mother for assault. I'll sue you all for emotional distress.
Ethan, you recorded it.
Sarah's voice trembled with disbelief. When you deal with people like you. I said coldly, you learn to take precautions. I hung up and blocked the new number. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Sarah and her father were still there. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes a mixture of shock, resentment, and the dawning panic of a failed con. I felt nothing, not a shred of pity. 3 years of love, buried by my own hand in a single night. From this day forward, I, Ethan Hayes, would never shed another tear for that family. The next day, the storm I'd been expecting finally broke. Local Seattle news blogs, Reddit threads, and TikTok were suddenly flooded with posts and videos. The headlines were all variations on a theme, crafted for maximum outrage. Shocking, Seattle tech director viciously attacks future mother-in-law at engagement party. Blue-collar groom shows true colors, assaults elder over wedding costs. In the videos, Brenda lay in a hospital bed, her head and arms wrapped in thick bandages, her face pale. She wept for the camera, detailing my supposed monstrous attack. She painted me as a manipulative user who had leveraged her daughter's connections to get ahead, a classic case of a guy who gets a little money and forgets where he came from. She claimed I flew into a rage and beat her, a defenseless old woman, because she'd asked for a fairer contribution to their wedding. The person filming was Sarah's cousin, a guy I'd never met but had heard was a small-time hustler. He was live-streaming from the hospital, his camera lingering on Brenda's injuries as he worked up a frenzy, demanding that the internet find me and serve justice. It didn't take long. My personal information, my name, my company, my job title, even the address of my parents' home in Ohio, was doxed and plastered everywhere. My phone blew up. Hundreds of texts from unknown numbers poured in, a torrent of vile, hateful messages. The reception desk in my company was overwhelmed with calls from people demanding I be fired. My boss, the VP of engineering, called me into his office, his face grim. He was professional, but the message was clear.
Ethan, the company can't afford to have its reputation tarnished by an employee's personal drama. You need to handle this, and fast.
I walked out of his office feeling the weight of 1,000 imaginary eyes on me. Just then, a message from Sarah came through on my work phone's secure messaging app. She sounded triumphant, her words a naked threat.
Ethan, see what's happening? Making a scene isn't going to help you. You're about to lose your job. If you just come and do the right thing, apologize and compensate us, I can still get my family to take the posts down.
I stared at the message, and the last flicker of emotion I had for her died. I didn't reply. Calmly, I powered down my phone, walked out to the company's rooftop terrace, and lit a cigarette. The cold Seattle wind whipped against my face, clearing my head. Was I angry? Absolutely. Did I feel wronged? More than anything, but emotions wouldn't solve this. They thought they could crush me with public opinion, force me to surrender. They seriously underestimated me. I didn't get to where I was by being lucky. I dialed the number of my best friend from college, Mark Shun. He was now a partner at a top law firm in the city, a shark who specialized in exactly this kind of mess. Mark, I said, I need your help. I told him everything from start to finish. When I was done, there was a moment of silence on the other end, then an explosive,
Jesus Christ, what is wrong with these people? Are they insane?
After venting, he switched into lawyer mode.
Ethan, stay calm. What they're doing, the slander, the doxing, it's all illegal. That recording you have is your silver bullet. But now is not the time to fire it.
Why not? I asked.
Let them dig their own graves.
Mark said, his voice sharp and confident.
Right now, the narrative is theirs. If you speak out, you'll just sound defensive. We need them to get greedier, to fully expose themselves for the vultures they are. Then, when we strike, it will be a kill shot. Let the story breathe for a bit.
I understood. So what do I do?
For now, you play along.
Mark advised.
Contact Sarah. Act scared. Tell her you're willing to negotiate. Make them think they've got you cornered. While you do that, I'll start compiling the evidence and drafting the lawsuits.
Okay. I hung up, a sense of control returning to me. I turned my phone back on and sent a simple text to Sarah. Let's talk. After sending it, I made another call. Hello. Is this Blackwater Investigations? I need you to run a background check on someone. Actually, on a whole family. I was going to find out everything there was to know about Brenda Miller, Robert Miller, and that hustler cousin of theirs. I had a gut feeling that this family, seemingly run by one tyrannical woman, had far more skeletons in its closet, and I was going to find every single one. 04 Sarah responded quickly, arranging a meeting for the next day at a private room in a high-end downtown steakhouse. I arrived on time. As I opened the door to the private dining room, I was hit by a cloying mix of expensive leather, cigar smoke, and cheap perfume. 3 people were seated inside: Brenda, Sarah, and the cousin from the videos, whose name I now knew was Vince. Brenda was lounging in a large leather chair, bandages still wrapped around her face, but the venom in her eyes was as potent as ever. She shot me a look of pure contempt and turned away, refusing to even acknowledge me. Vince, with a buzz cut and a thick gold chain around his neck, had his feet up on the table. He looked me up and down with a challenging, predatory glare. Only Sarah stood up, forcing a weak smile.
Ethan, you're here.
She had makeup on, but it couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the exhaustion etched on her face. I ignored the other 2, my gaze fixed on her. Let's get this over with, I said coolly, taking a seat opposite them. A waiter was pouring glasses of expensive Cabernet, but the rich aroma couldn't cut through the thick, suffocating stench of greed in the room.
So, you finally came to your senses?
Vince said, dropping his feet to the floor. He leaned forward, tapping a thick finger on the polished wood table.
My cousin's got a soft spot for you. If it were up to me, I'd have broken both your legs by now.
I just stared at him, my expression unreadable, as if observing a particularly uninteresting insect. Brenda couldn't hold back any longer.
You little bastard.
She shrieked.
You have the nerve to show your face. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this much pain. Let me tell you, this isn't over.
Sarah quickly placed a hand on her arm.
Mom, don't get worked up. Your health. We agreed to let Vince handle this, remember?
She turned to me, her eyes pleading, her voice a practiced, gentle tone.
Ethan, look what you've done to my mother. The doctor said those burns could have been disfiguring.
I had to suppress a bitter laugh. What a performance. Good cop, bad cop, mother-daughter edition. Vince pulled a single sheet of paper from his briefcase and slapped it down on the table in front of me.
Enough of the crap. Here's a list of our demands. Read it.
I glanced down. The page was a typed list of shocking, audacious demands. Emotional distress, $500,000. Medical expenses and future plastic surgery, $200,000. Lost wages and punitive damages, $100,000. Compensation for Sarah's wasted youth, $100,000. And at the bottom, scrawled in angry red ink with multiple exclamation points, must immediately sign over title of the condo at address to Sarah Miller. A grand total of $900,000 in cash, plus a condo worth over $2 million. They weren't treating me like an ATM. They were treating me like a lottery ticket they had a right to cash. I looked up, my eyes bypassing the ridiculous list and settling on Sarah for the last time. My voice was quiet but carried clearly across the table. Sarah, I have one last question for you. If I agree to all of this today, if I give you everything, sign away the condo, and walk away with nothing, would you still want to be with me? Would you still go out for a $10 bowl of ramen with me, like we did when we first met? Her eyes darted away. She couldn't meet my gaze. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't form a single word. Silence. A long, damning silence. It was more hurtful than any insult she could have thrown at me. I understood. I finally completely understood. I started to laugh. It was a genuine laugh, a laugh of pure, unadulterated release, so hard that tears pricked my eyes. My heart, in that moment, turned to stone. Fine, I said. I'll sign. Greedy, triumphant smiles bloomed on Brenda's and Vince's faces. Sarah let out a visible sigh of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Vince produced a pre-drafted compensation and property transfer agreement and a pen, sliding them in front of me.
Smart move. Sign it, and we'll need your thumbprint.
I picked up the pen. Under their expectant, feverish gazes, I pretended I was about to sign my name. I could practically see Brenda mentally spending the money, planning her next cruise. But just as the tip of the pen was about to touch the paper, I paused. I slowly lifted my head and looked at them. Then, from my other pocket, I pulled out my second phone. I turned on the screen and angled it toward them. The screen clearly showed the video recording interface, which had been running since the moment I walked in. Every ugly word, every extortionate demand had been captured in high definition. Brenda, I said, my voice dangerously soft. I've recorded this entire conversation. The words dropped into the quiet room like a grenade. According to the revised code of Washington, Section 9A, 56, 120, extortion in the first degree is a Class B felony. The amount you're demanding puts this squarely in that category, carrying a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. The smiles on Brenda's and Vince's faces froze, cracking into expressions of comical disbelief and dawning horror. I stood up, looming over them, and dropped my second bombshell. Oh, and by the way, I took the liberty of visiting your hospital yesterday. I have a signed report from your attending physician. It clearly states, and I quote, superficial second-degree burns to the face and neck, covering approximately 2% of the body. An injury like that is an outpatient issue. It barely qualifies as a minor injury, let alone something requiring hospitalization. Those bandages, the online sob story. That's fraud. If you've accepted a single dollar in donations from your little pity party, that's wire fraud. If you use this fake injury to file an insurance claim, that's insurance fraud. So, I said, leaning in slightly, Who do you think is going to jail now? The room was utterly silent. The color had drained from Brenda's face. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Vince, the tough guy, looked like he'd been poleaxed. And Sarah. Sarah was slumped in her chair, her face ashen, staring at me as if she were seeing a complete stranger for the first time. I picked up their ridiculous agreement and, in front of them, ripped it into pieces. The game, I said, is over. I turned and walked out of that disgusting ambush, leaving them to drown in the mess they had created. 05, I didn't release the video right away. I was waiting for the perfect moment. I handed everything to Mark. The audio from the engagement party, the video of the extortion attempt at the steakhouse, and the official, stamped diagnosis from the hospital.
Brilliant.
Mark exclaimed after reviewing the materials, slapping his thigh.
Ethan, this is a work of art. You let them walk right into the trap.
What's the next move? I asked.
Leave it to me.
Mark said, a predatory gleam in his eye.
I know a PR firm that specializes in this. We're going to bury them so deep they'll never see daylight again.
2 days later, a post and a short documentary-style video titled A Slap, a tureen of soup, and $1 million shakedown. How I was pushed to the brink by my fiancé's family exploded across the internet. The video was professionally edited, a masterclass in narrative destruction. It started with the happy scenes from our engagement party, the smiles, the toasts. Then, it cut to Brenda on stage, her voice dripping with venom, and her infamous line.
Some men are just animals. You have to beat them to make them listen.
The next shot was a close-up of my bruised cheek, followed by Sarah's blank, emotionless expression. Then, the slow-motion shot of the bisque being poured, paired with Brenda's blood-curdling scream. The second half was the footage from the steakhouse, Vince's thuggish posturing, the close-up of the extortion list, and my final, calm recitation of the criminal code. To cap it all off, the video displayed the official doctor's report side by side with clips of Brenda's melodramatic performance in her hospital bed. There wasn't a single word of my own commentary. It was all facts, all evidence. And its cold, brutal objectivity was more powerful than any emotional plea. Within an hour of being posted, the internet was on fire.
Holy S. The plot twist of the year. I was one of the people trashing this guy, and now I want to punch myself in the face. This isn't a mother-in-law, this is a crime family. It's like a low-budget episode of The Sopranos. You have to beat them to make them listen? What century is this woman from? She's a monster. They were mad about a $100,000 gift and wanted a multi-million-dollar condo for free. The nerve of these people is unbelievable. That cousin is 100% a scumbag. He looks and talks like a cheap movie villain.
The tide of public opinion turned with the force of a tsunami. The same online mob that had been calling for my head was now relentlessly attacking the Millers. Hashtags like hashtag Monster-in-Law and hashtag Seattle Shakedown started trending on Twitter. Brenda's hospital live streams became a viral meme. Vince's TikTok account was permanently banned for spreading disinformation and inciting harassment. Their home address and phone numbers were leaked, and rumor had it people were sending them mountains of unordered pizzas, all cash on delivery. Everything they had inflicted on me was now being returned to them, tenfold. My phone finally fell silent. Sarah's, however, was probably melting. She tried calling me from dozens of different numbers. I didn't answer a single one. Finally, a message came through on a new burner account she must have created. It was a long, rambling voice memo filled with desperate sobs.
Ethan, I'm begging you, please take the video down. We can't even leave the house anymore. My mom. She's having a nervous breakdown, she just screams and breaks things all day. Everywhere I go, people stare at me, they whisper. We were wrong, okay? We know we were wrong.
I listened to the entire thing, then replied with 5 simple words. You brought this on yourselves. Then I blocked her again. Back at the office, my boss had seen the video. He called me in, his attitude completely transformed. He clapped me on the shoulder, his face full of admiration.
Ethan, well done. Decisive. That's how you handle bullies. The company is behind you 100%. Don't you worry, this won't affect your position here in the slightest.
I nodded politely, feeling nothing. Just then, an email from the private investigator landed in my inbox. The subject line read, Preliminary Findings, Robert Miller. I opened it. One detail immediately jumped out at me. The report showed that Robert Miller, the quiet, henpecked man I thought I knew, had been making regular, substantial wire transfers from a discreet third-party account to an unknown bank account in Tacoma. The transfers were like clockwork, every month for years. The amount was nearly 2/3 of his salary. I tapped my fingers on my desk. A man who lived so frugally, who endured constant verbal abuse at home, was secretly sending most of his money to a stranger. What was that about? A slow, cold smile spread across my face. This show was about to get a whole lot more interesting. 06, I instructed the P.I. to dig deeper into Robert Miller's secret finances. Money trails always lead somewhere. A week later, a more detailed report was waiting for me. Reading it, I had to marvel at the sheer, unadulterated drama of it all. Robert Miller, the man who cowered before Brenda, who acted like the world's biggest doormat, had another life. In Tacoma, a city just an hour's drive away, he had another family. He had been supporting a mistress, a woman nearly 20 years younger than him. And the bombshell, they had a son together. The boy was in elementary school. The report included surveillance photos. In them, Robert was a different man. Gone was the washed-out, faded jacket. He was wearing a crisp, new polo shirt, a genuine smile lighting up his face, a smile I had never once seen in his own home. He was holding the little boy's hand as they walked through a park. In another photo, he and the young woman were shopping at a farmer's market, looking for all the world like a normal, happy couple. He was pinching pennies at home, taking Brenda's abuse, just so he could funnel the majority of his income to his secret son and his real love, while playing the part of a pathetic husband and father in Seattle. It all clicked into place. I finally understood Brenda's hysteria, her frantic, desperate need to squeeze every last cent out of me. She must have suspected something. She must have felt the foundation of her life. The home she ruled with an iron fist was nothing but an empty shell, ready to collapse at any moment. Her tyranny, her need for control, it was all a desperate attempt to mask her own fear and the utter failure of her marriage. What a cosmic joke. Just then my phone rang. It was Sarah again. She had somehow managed to get my new number from a colleague at work. I answered. Her voice was raw and exhausted.
Ethan, can we meet? Please. I'm begging you.
After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. I was morbidly curious to see what she could possibly have left to say. We met at a coffee shop she chose. She looked even worse than before. Her eyes were sunken, and the youthful glow she once had was gone, replaced by a deep, anxious weariness. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up.
Ethan, my mom. She's not doing well. Since the video came out, she hasn't left the house. She's deeply depressed. Her doctor is worried.
She nervously stirred her latte, her voice choked with emotion.
I know we were wrong. Horribly wrong. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm just asking you to let us go. If you keep this up, you're going to push her over the edge.
I listened silently until she finished, then took a sip of my own coffee. Are you done? I asked. She nodded numbly. I looked at her, my expression as calm and placid as a still lake. Sarah, I said softly, did you know that every month your father sends child support payments to his other son? My voice was quiet, but the words hit her like a thunderclap. She froze completely. The spoon slipped from her fingers, clattering into her cup and splashing coffee on her white dress. Her pupils contracted, her face a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock and a dawning horror she couldn't comprehend.
What? What did you say? What other son?
Her reaction told me everything. She had no idea. She had lived her entire life in a carefully constructed lie, believing she was the princess at the center of it all. I didn't say another word. I just took out my phone, pulled up the photos, and slid it across the table to her. Robert's happy, smiling face. The young, vibrant woman. The cheerful little boy. Each photo was a dagger, aimed with precision at the hollow heart of her family's hypocrisy. Sarah's eyes were glued to the screen, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her face went from white to a sickly, deathly gray. I knew, in that moment, that the ticking time bomb I had just planted inside the Miller family, a family held together by tyranny and deceit, was about to detonate with a force 100 times more powerful than a tureen of hot soup. And all I had to do was sit back and watch the fireworks. 07, I don't remember how Sarah managed to stumble out of that coffee shop. I just know that the woman who left looked like her soul had been ripped out. That night, the war I had anticipated finally erupted in the Miller family's now infamous apartment. I got the play-by-play later from Mark's source inside their condo building, a gossipy woman on the HOA board. Apparently, Sarah got home, didn't say a word, and just threw my phone down in front of Brenda, who was in the living room, predictably ranting about me. At first, Brenda was dismissive.
What is this garbage now?
She muttered, picking up the phone. But when she saw the pictures, her tirade stopped cold. The living room fell silent. Then came a scream that was barely human. Brenda couldn't process it. The worthless loser she had berated for decades, the man she had controlled for their entire marriage, had dared have a whole other life behind her back. A life with another woman and another son. Her carefully crafted world, her absolute power. It all shattered in an instant, more completely than the tureen I had smashed on the ballroom floor. She lost her mind. She ran into the kitchen, grabbed a butcher knife, and went after Robert, who had just walked in the door from work. The sight of the knife shocked him, but when he saw the photos on the phone in Sarah's hand, he knew the game was up. Decades of resentment, humiliation, and repressed rage finally exploded out of him. He didn't back down. He lunged forward, wrestled the knife from her hand, and threw it across the room.
Have you lost your mind?
He roared at her for the first time in their lives.
I can't take it anymore. You're a miserable tyrant. With her, I feel like a man. With her, I feel human.
The argument quickly devolved into a physical brawl. Brenda clawed at him like a wild animal. Robert shoved her to the ground. They rolled around the small living room, a whirlwind of pathetic violence. Everything breakable in the apartment was destroyed. Vases, lamps, the TV, shards of their life flew everywhere. The self-proclaimed abuser, the woman who preached a philosophy of violence, was now a betrayed victim, wailing on the floor. The irony was poetic. Vince, the thug cousin, must have gotten a call because he showed up with two of his buddies, ready to teach his uncle a lesson. But Robert, now a cornered animal, was done being pushed around. He grabbed an unbroken ceramic lamp and smashed it over Vince's head, drawing blood. The whole disaster ended when the neighbors called the police. The cops arrived to a scene of total carnage, a wrecked apartment and a cast of bloodied, hysterical characters. The family's disgrace, now a local legend, became the new hot gossip for the entire building. Sitting in my own bright, peaceful living room, I watched a grainy video of the chaos, filmed by a neighbor through their window. I could hear the screaming, the cursing, the smashing. My heart was calm. Let the dogs devour each other. I felt no pity. I just picked up my phone and authorized Mark to formally file the lawsuit against Brenda Miller for defamation and attempted extortion. The Miller family was already imploding. My counterattack was just beginning. 08, the day of the defamation trial, was bright and clear. I walked into the courthouse in a crisp suit, my lawyer, Mark, at my side. At the defendant's table, the Miller family looked like hollowed-out shells of their former selves. Brenda had aged a decade. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes were a mixture of hatred and despair. Robert sat beside her, but they maintained a careful distance, an unbridgeable chasm between them. Sarah was in the gallery, her head bowed, her hands trembling in her lap. And Vince, a bandage still on his head, sat there as Brenda's key witness, looking bored and menacing. The trial began. Mark was methodical, presenting the evidence to the judge and jury. The full audio from the engagement party. The high-definition video of the steakhouse shakedown. The official doctor's report. Screenshots of the slanderous online posts. Recordings of the harassing phone calls to my office. Each piece of evidence was a hammer blow, cracking the Millers' already fragile defense. Their lawyer was completely outmatched, his arguments flimsy and pathetic against the mountain of proof. He tried to frame Brenda's actions as a mother's fierce love and words spoken in anger, but it sounded ridiculous. Every question from the judge left Brenda flustered and stammering. All she could do was repeat.
He started it. He threw soup on me.
Mark calmly countered.
Before the plaintiff poured the soup, did you, or did you not, strike him across the face? Did you, or did you not, publicly issue humiliating and slanderous statements?
Brenda was speechless. The trial was a landslide. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. During the final statements, I rose to my feet. I didn't get emotional. I didn't play the victim. I simply recounted the facts and described the damage their actions had caused to my personal and professional life. Then, just before I sat down, I added one final, seemingly off-the-cuff remark. Your Honor, I also feel compelled to mention the defendant's primary witness, Mr. Vince Moretti. I looked directly at the cousin. During his online live streams, Mr. Moretti repeatedly made public threats against my life, stating he was going to break my legs. I've been led to believe that Mr. Moretti is quite well known in certain circles, and his past activities might be even more compelling than today's testimony. I sat down. In the gallery, I saw a man in a plain suit who had been quietly observing the trial. A friend of Mark's from the Seattle PD's fraud division nods slightly and jots something in his notebook. The verdict was delivered on the spot. Brenda Miller was found guilty of defamation. She was sentenced to 6 months of probation, ordered to pay me $50,000 in damages, and, most humiliatingly, required to publish a full-page public apology to me in the Seattle Times for 3 consecutive days. When the sentence was read, Brenda's legs gave out, and she collapsed in her chair. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunshine, I felt a sense of closure. Less than an hour later, Mark called, his voice bubbling with amusement.
Ethan, you're not going to believe this. That cousin, Vince? The moment he stepped out of the courthouse, a couple of plainclothes detectives picked him up.
I wasn't surprised at all. The P.I. had discovered Vince had a rap sheet for assault and was currently involved in some shady online debt collection schemes that bordered on loan sharking. My statement in court was just the nudge the police needed. The Millers had not only lost the case and a fortune they didn't have, but they had also managed to get their only enforcer thrown in jail. I glanced at my phone. A long, desperate text from Sarah, full of apologies and pleas, had just come through. I deleted it without a second thought. The game was entering its next phase. 09, losing the lawsuit sent Brenda completely over the edge. She blamed her entire downfall on Robert's betrayal. She immediately filed for divorce, demanding alimony, damages for emotional distress, and for Robert to be left with absolutely nothing. A new, pathetic drama began to unfold. But to her shock, Robert had almost no assets to his name. Besides the half-paid-off mortgage on the condo, his bank accounts contained less than $5,000. His meager salary had been systematically siphoned off for years. Brenda threw tantrums in court, but she had no proof of where the money went. That's when I provided a little assistance. Using an anonymous, encrypted email address, I sent a neatly packaged file to Brenda's lawyer. It contained Robert's complete bank statements for the last 5 years, with every transfer to his mistress's account in Tacoma clearly highlighted. I also included another little gift, a photo of an IOU. The P.I. had unearthed it during his investigation. 3 years ago, Brenda's own brother, Sarah's uncle, had borrowed $30,000 from Robert to start a business. The loan was documented, signed, and had never been paid back. Brenda's lawyer, seeing his chance, immediately used the evidence to sue Robert for fraudulent transfer of marital assets. Brenda, armed with the IOU, then stormed over to her brother's house to demand repayment. Her brother, a deadbeat who had long since gambled the money away, claimed the $30,000 was a gift, not a loan. Brother and sister had a screaming match that ended with their elderly mother having to be taken to the hospital for stress-induced chest pains. Ultimately, The court ruled that Robert had indeed hidden assets and ordered him to pay half of the transferred amount to Brenda. But Robert was now a man with nothing to lose. He declared he'd rather go to jail as a deadbeat than give that woman another dime. He promptly filed for bankruptcy. Brenda, after all her scheming, ended up with nothing. Her legal battles had drained her life savings. She lost her husband, her condo was foreclosed on by the bank, and her own family had disowned her. The woman who had tried to devour me whole was now utterly alone, with nothing to her name. Listening to Mark recount the saga over the phone was like hearing a story about strangers. I had used their own greed to defeat them. I set them against each other and watched them tear themselves apart. It was the most fitting revenge I could have imagined. Then a year passed. My life had transformed. I left my corporate job and, with a few brilliant colleagues, launched my own tech startup. Leveraging my network and expertise, we secured our first round of venture capital funding and were already making waves. I was at a swanky industry gala, mingling a glass of champagne in my hand. As I was chatting with a potential investor, a server carrying a tray of drinks bumped into me, spilling a few drops of red wine on my hand.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir.
A familiar, yet distant, voice stammered. I looked up and froze. It was Sarah. She was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting server's uniform. Her heavy makeup couldn't hide the sallow, exhausted pallor of her skin. The bright, sparkling eyes I once knew were now dull and lifeless. She recognized me at the same instant, and her body went rigid, the tray in her hands trembling. Her gaze flickered from my tailored suit to the expensive watch on my wrist, then back to her own uniform. Her expression was a painful cocktail of shame, embarrassment, and a flicker of resentment. I simply took a napkin, wiped my hand, and gave her a curt nod before turning to walk away.
Ethan.
She called out, her voice desperate. She rushed forward and grabbed my sleeve. I stopped and turned back to her.
Can we just talk for a second?
She pleaded. I glanced over at a quiet seating area in the corner. You have 5 minutes. We sat down on a plush sofa. She couldn't look at me, her hands wringing the fabric of her apron. She started, and tears immediately began to fall.
I know I have no right to talk to you. I'm sorry, Ethan. I am so sorry. If I could go back to that night, I would have stopped her. I swear I would have. My parents are divorced. My mom is a wreck. She lives in a tiny apartment, her health is failing. My uncle's family won't even speak to us anymore.
She was sobbing now, a lost, broken person.
I'm working 3 different restaurant jobs just to get by. Ethan, I know what I did was wrong. But I still love you. Can you please just give me another chance? I don't want anything from you. I'd do anything just to be with you again.
I listened to it all, her confession, her tears. I felt nothing. It was like watching a movie with the sound off. Just then, a warm, confident voice sounded beside me.
Ethan, there you are.
I turned. A stunning woman in a chic white pantsuit, her posture radiating elegance and intelligence, was walking toward me. It was my girlfriend, Claire. She's a lawyer, Mark's younger sister, in fact. We met at a dinner party and clicked instantly. She's brilliant, independent, and sees the world with a clarity I admire. With her, I feel seen, respected, and supported. Claire came to my side, her hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. She glanced at the weeping Sarah and asked me politely,
A friend of yours?
Sarah looked at Claire, at her poise, her confidence, her success. Then she looked down at herself. The tears flowed harder. I stood up, not answering Claire's question. I looked down at Sarah, my gaze holding no hatred, no pity, only a cold, vast distance. You've got it all wrong, Sarah, I said, my voice calm and final. You were never in love with me. You were in love with the man you and your family thought you could control. I didn't wait for a response. Claire's hand tightened on mine, and together we walked away, leaving her there in the ruins of her own making. We didn't look back. Some wounds never fully heal. The best you can do is let them become scars, medals you earned for surviving a war. 11. I thought the story was over. I had underestimated Brenda Miller's capacity for madness. The divorce, the bankruptcy, the public humiliation, the cumulative blows had shattered her sanity. She funneled all her misery, all her rage, into a single target, me. I had destroyed her perfect life. One afternoon, I was in a board meeting when my office line buzzed. It was the front desk receptionist, her voice tight with panic. "Mr. Hayes, there's a crazy woman downstairs with a can of red paint. She's screaming your name and trying to get past security." I knew exactly who it was. I had anticipated that Brenda, cornered and desperate, might do something extreme. When we first moved into the new office, I had given building security her photo and a warning. I spoke calmly into the phone. "Do not engage. Detain her and call the police. And make sure you save all the security footage." I hung up and continued the meeting as if nothing had happened. By the time I went downstairs, the police were already there. Brenda was pinned to the lobby floor by 2 security guards, still struggling and spewing curses. Her hair was wild, her eyes feral. A can of red paint lay on its side, a viscous crimson pool spreading across the polished floor. When she saw me, she thrashed harder, her voice a raw shriek of pure venom.
"Ethan Hayes. You bastard. You'll burn in hell for this. I'll haunt you from the grave."
I didn't go near her. I didn't even look her in the eye. I felt no anger, no fear, nothing. I simply let my legal team handle it. The security footage was crystal clear. It showed her arriving with the paint, screaming threats, and attempting to force her way into the building. The case was open and shut. She was charged with trespassing, attempted vandalism, and making terroristic threats, and was sentenced to 15 days in county jail. The incident made the local news, a minor story that served as an excuse for the media to rehash her entire sordid history. She became a citywide cautionary tale, a caricature of greed and bitterness. 15 days later, when she was released, I heard she was a different person, vacant, rambling, completely broken. She was no longer capable of making waves, a ghost who had simply faded away into the city's margins. A person's ruin doesn't come from external attacks. It grows from the poison within. 12. The storms finally passed. My company's new product launch was a massive success, and our valuation soared. Claire and I bought a beautiful house with a large garden in the hills overlooking the city, and we spent our weekends arguing playfully over blueprints and paint swatches. One sunny afternoon, we were sitting on the grass in our future backyard, looking over the architect designs. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder, a mischievous glint in her eye.
"So, for this engagement,"
she teased.
"your mother is not allowed to hit me. Deal?"
I laughed, turning to look her in the eyes before pulling her into a hug. "My family," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "will only ever love and respect you." Once in a while, I'd hear bits and pieces about the Millers from Mark. Sarah, after bouncing between dead-end jobs, had apparently married a man from a small town in eastern Washington and moved away, living a quiet, unremarkable life. Robert and his mistress had eventually fallen out, fighting constantly over the money he no longer had. Their story, too, had ended in ashes. The news stirred nothing in me. It was like hearing about characters in a book I'd read long ago. I thought back to that chaotic night, over a year ago. The searing slap, the scalding soup. It wasn't an act of impulse. It was the first shot I fired in a war for my own dignity. It was the death knell for a foolish, one-sided love I had finally woken up from. The sun felt warm on my skin. Claire's hand was in mine, a steady, comforting presence. I finally understood. True happiness isn't something you find by enduring abuse or begging for scraps of affection. It's something you have to win for yourself. You have to win your dignity to earn the right to be loved. You have to win your own life to earn a future filled with light.